The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Remember that conspiracy theory about a Democratic National Committee staffer named Seth Rich, who was shot and killed a couple of years ago? Fox News, as well as a bunch of other media outlets, actually both on the left and the right, for a while were pushing a narrative that Seth Rich's death wasn't a burglary gone wrong or anything like it, but instead it was connected to the WikiLeaks disclosure of hacked DNC emails. And some people even went as far as to sort of implicate that Seth Rich's death, to imply that Seth Rich's death involved or connected or implicated Hillary Clinton to some degree. And Seth Rich's parents are now suing Fox News, saying that Fox News intentionally was exploiting the murder of their son. And Fox News did a bunch of stories about this. They ultimately retracted a story about Seth Rich, and now they're no longer commenting about the lawsuit. But as the lawsuit says, quote, Fox continued to exploit the sham story because it was good for ratings. And as soon as I read this, I thought, you know, there's a long list of others that need to be worried about getting sued here. And I know that if you have a much smaller audience, maybe you don't have to worry about it, even if you were parroting the Seth Rich conspiracy theories. But Alex Jones's InfoWars was pushing this big time. I think they sort of also did a mea culpa and took it back. Although maybe now, no, you know what? They didn't. Thing? That was with Pizzagate. Yeah. I don't know that Alex Jones ever retracted the Seth Rich stuff. As far as I recall, I think on the left, Jimmy Dore was pushing this, although he at some point backed away. There's a guy who I think he's a Trump. I don't know if he's left or right. I think he might be. I think at one point we found out he's a Trumpist. His name's Ha Goodman. You know about Ha Goodman?
Oh, Ha, yeah.
Ha Goodman. And RT was covering it. I don't know if any of these people are at risk of getting sued, but it wasn't just Fox News pushing this stuff. And I think what it'll come down to is that you have to demonstrate damages, right? It's harder to demonstrate you were damaged by a small show pushing a conspiracy theory as compared to Fox News pushing a conspiracy theory. And by the way, people are still pushing this conspiracy theory. I still get emails, unrelated, total non sequitur, right? People will respond and say, David, why are you covering X? X could be anything, and ignoring that Seth Rich was killed by the Clintons. And obviously, I never respond to those people. I file the emails in case they're ever requested by law enforcement agencies. If I did respond, I'd probably say something like, seek help if you're not beyond it. And I hope that they win their lawsuit. I hope they get a settlement. And this is not a First Amendment or free speech issue, right? The free speech crowd is already out in force. Number one, this isn't the government limiting anyone's speech. It's coverage decisions made by for-profit companies, which can have consequences. Those companies have a responsibility to act in a responsible way. And coverage of these debunked conspiracies actually can incite violence. Remember, with Comet Ping Pong as an example, a guy showed up to investigate Pizzagate at Comet Ping Pong as a result of all of the conspiratorial coverage around that in the media. So these are serious claims and assertions that have real-world impact. And by the way, this is a civil matter, right? The question is, did the irresponsible and inaccurate reporting of Fox News cause real-world damage to the family? No one is stopping Fox News from covering it. No one stopped Fox News from covering it. There was outrage. Fox chose at some point to retract at least one of those stories. But the decisions that are made editorially by media outlets have consequences. There is not a free speech issue here whatsoever. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I wonder if Sean Hannity and the other Fox News pundits crafted their words in a way that it came across as just speculation. And maybe they're not liable in that case, because if it's speculation, that's a different thing from them reporting it.
Yeah,
news.
Listen, for whatever reason, some of it Fox News decided to retract. So clearly they must have felt that the semantic ambiguity of how all the stories were presented was not enough. And we will see what ultimately happens here. Send me your thoughts on this story, on anything else we covered today. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman, and the show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Alan Castle, and today's sustaining long-term hero member of the day is Kyle Young. Kyle has been with us since September of 2011. And Alan, our new member of the day. Join both Alan and Kyle. Sign up at davidpakman.com/membership. We do have a coupon code that is now available. 40% off membership with the coupon code VOTESOON18. And if you want something simpler, a simpler way to support our work, make a pledge of $1 at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. The phones are on fire already today. We're going to take some phone calls at 617-830-4750. Clearly, people very, very interested in chiming in. We're going to start with our caller from the 817 area code. Just listen for your area code. You won't really hear anything different if you're waiting on hold. Listen for your area code and caller from 817. Tell us who you are.
Hi, my name's Chris. I'm a sustaining member from Arlington, Texas. Nice to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you. What's on your mind? And we're not on speaker or Bluetooth, are we, Chris?
I am. Let me take you off real quick.
Okay. I thought we might be dealing with speaker today, but I'm glad we're solving it.
Can you hear me okay?
That's better. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So my question, my comment was that, Donald Trump, he's obviously made it abundantly clear by his erratic behavior, his abhorrent memory, and his wishy-washy policies that, he's a puppet in every sense of the word. His policy on any given topic is entirely based on the opinion that's been espoused to him by the last person that he spoke to.
Yep.
We all know that he just likes to feel important. That's the only reason he really does anything. So I insist on getting 2 scoops of ice cream, and everybody else only gets 1. But what I'm wondering is, he's clearly being manipulated on all sides, most obviously by Russia, but also here at home by corporate interests in the NRA. My question to you is, who do you think here in the United States, who is not tied to Russia, is pulling the thickest string? And what do you think their end game is?
I think, listen, I have no particular reason to think that someone like Stephen Miller is particularly tied to Russia. Like, he's an advisor to Trump, and certainly he's been defending Trump on Russia stuff. But someone like Stephen Miller seems to really have Trump's ear and not at least be, to my current, I'm putting like 10 qualifiers on it. To the best of my knowledge, based on what's gone public so far, I don't know that Stephen Miller is in a direct way complicit in whatever's going on with Russia. So take that for what it is, Chris. But, someone like Stephen Miller is who I would say is really manipulating Trump outside of a Russia-tied force.
What do you think he's trying to get out of it?
I think self-aggrandizement and sort of setting himself up for a career of influence peddling and sort of being seen as a powerful guy.
Yeah, that's unlikely, but he's a goober, but whatever.
Yeah, it didn't work out great for Sean Spicer so far, but maybe for Stephen Miller it'll work out better. Who knows?
Didn't work for Bannon either. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Actually, and in fact, Bannon gets pretty good speaking gigs right now. I don't know that we can say it hasn't worked for Bannon. He's doing well personally on a personal basis.
Stephen Miller will continue to do well so long as he can stay awake.
Yeah, right. If he falls asleep during meetings, it's going to be tough to influence Trump. Let's stick to the phones. We'll go next to our caller from the 931 area code. Who's there from 931? 931, are you there? I heard you breathing when we turned on when we went to you.
Hello.
Yes, hello. Who's this?
This is Joanne.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Joanne.
Joanne. Oh, go ahead, Joanne.
I just want to tell you, do not quit writing.
Don't quit writing, you're saying, Joanne?
To your political views, I would die if you quit writing.
Oh, if we quit, right? Or is she saying writing? I can't.
Do not quit. Do not quit.
Do not quit. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Joanne. I appreciate that. There's no plan to quit right now. Thank you.
You have educated me tremendously. Thank you so much.
Wow, where are you calling from, Joanne? Please, if I may ask.
We live in a really tiny southern town called Estill Springs, Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, okay. All right. And how are things going there?
One of those God-fearing towns,
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But, votes for Trump. I mean, they had on the billboards around here at the gun shops, they had buy a gun to kill Hillary.
Are you serious? They were advertising that?
I'm serious. They had buy a gun to kill Hillary and vote for Trump.
How is that not incitement to violence? Like, how can that be legal, you know?
Secret Service has to be looking into that.
Yeah. Hey, Joanne, I'm curious. What's the best restaurant in your town?
Oh, my goodness. Probably McDonald's. Well, in my town, there's not even a restaurant.
Did you say there's not really restaurants? I'm having a hard time understanding, Joanne.
We have a post office, a little doctor's office, and a vet.
Oh, I see. Okay, what's like the best restaurant nearby, maybe in an adjacent town?
Probably Red Lobster.
Red Lobster.
Seriously.
Oh boy, Joanne,
Seriously,
listen,
yeah.
I am sincerely sorry that these are the circumstances that you find yourself in, but I appreciate the words of encouragement, and I hope to hear from you again.
Oh, you will. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Really appreciate it. Joanne, instant classic caller on the David Pakman Show. Okay, let's go to our next caller. Let's try the 404 area code. Caller from 404. Who's there?
Hi, David. This is Jeff from Atlanta. How are you doing today?
Good. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good. I've been watching the news lately, and I heard the Republicans come out and say that they haven't discovered any evidence of Russian collusion. And I was reading in the USA Today today about exactly how they came out and said there's an attack on our democracy from Russian hacking. Now, my question is this Russian hacking of the DNC they're talking about? That they're saying that Russia hacked the DNC, stole the emails, and gave them to WikiLeaks? Is that what they're saying?
It depends
I'm
who
not
you're
sure.
talking about. It depends who you're talking. I mean, there's a ton of different stuff going on. So I don't know specific. I didn't see the USA Today article you're talking about, so I wouldn't be able to. You'd know more about that article than I know about.
Yeah, I literally just read it while I was waiting on hold just now, and they were going on and on and on, and I still just haven't been able to be specific in exactly what we're looking at, because I've been skeptical of the actual Russia meddling since the beginning. Now, I do believe Trump is in some corrupt dealings with the Russian banks and may have done some illegal stuff before in the campaign, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly what, and no one will tell me exactly. I can't find it anywhere. Exactly.
What is it you can't find, Jeff? Jeff, hold on. You're shot out of a cannon today, which I appreciate, but what is it you can't find? Tell me that.
I can't find solid evidence. Like, for example, people who do say the DNC was hacked.
Right.
That's been debunked by a gentleman by the name of William Benny, who is a former NSA operative. Oh boy, huh?
Jeff, what would it take? What would it take to convince you about the story? Like, what would change your mind and make you say, you know what? I think there's something to it.
Compelling evidence.
What would that be?
Would you have to have something where we could it would be a situation to where everyone can accept the evidence because it's just undeniable.
So your standard of evidence is that no one disagrees with it ever. That you would need 100% consensus on the evidence.
I hear
doesn't exist. Never going to happen.
But the stories come out and then they get retracted. What
story has been retracted,
and then
Jeff?
The CNN reporters who supposedly said that Trump got a hold of Russian WikiLeaks before they actually were released. They went on about it for a couple of days. Then it came back, said, "Oh, we were mistaken," and they actually did not receive them in advance. And those 3 journalists got fired.
Well, hold on a second, Jeff. Whether Trump personally received WikiLeaks documents in advance of them being public, aside from that, there's every indication that the Trump campaign was in contact with WikiLeaks and that WikiLeaks was in contact with Russia and that there was a cutout. That's all been established. And the public timing of statements from Trump and others coincide very suspiciously with WikiLeaks releases. So, like, what else would you need?
Well, what you just stated right there is great, but it isn't actual evidence. It's like
right. So I'm asking, what would be evidence? Is the evidence that Trump would come out and just admit it? Is that the only thing that would convince you?
No, not at all. If we actually, let's say, Julian Assange has said it was not a state actor who came out and gave them the information. Now, if Julian Assange were to come out and say, yeah, Russia gave us the information and they hacked it, then I'd believe it.
Yeah, but Jeff, hold on a second. Even that statement is worded very carefully because every indication is that there was an intermediary between Russia and Julian Assange, which gives him the plausible deniability of saying our contact was not an official involved with the Russian government. That's completely consistent with what we know about. Like, there's no disagreement that I'm hearing about the evidence. It just seems you don't like it.
No, I'm just wanting someone to the way the media is portraying this.
Which media?
As if they are the CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, ABC News. Everyone has accepted the fact that Russia hacked the election. I mean, as if it
right,
were a
because
fact.
at this point it's basically undeniable given everything we know. That's not a conceit. Just because I guarantee you that all corporate media would agree that one of the elements that we breathe in on a daily basis is oxygen. The fact that they all agree about that, it doesn't make it suspicious necessarily. It might just mean that it's the truth. Listen, Jeff, I don't think you and I are going to get too much further, but I'd maybe re-examine what you would accept as evidence, and check out our long-form piece, by the way, 30 minutes on the evidence so far. You might find it interesting. Let's go to our next caller from the 208 area code. Caller from 208. Who's this?
Hello, this is Micah from Idaho.
Go ahead, Micah.
I was just wondering, because you had I was watching an interview you did a while back with someone of the atheist community, and I forgot his name, but he was calling you an atheist, and I was wondering, because you seemed to kind of distance yourself from that title, and I was wondering if that was due to sort of an ideological disagreement you have with it, or if it's more due to distancing yourself from the movement,
that guy, whoever he was. No, listen, I don't have any particular problem. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know the interview you're talking about, and there may have been some like very specific definitions that were being used. It might have been like a semantic disagreement. I don't really know. I mean, I can't think of any so-called religious belief that I hold, and I'm open to having my mind changed, and I believe that it's possible that there is a God or some higher power or a creator. I've just not yet been presented with anything that I would consider worthy of making me believe that, and whether that makes me agnostic or atheist, I don't know, and I don't know that it's that important, you know. But like, I'm a secular person, I'm a non-religious person. I think the phenomena of our world that we haven't yet found explanations for have an explanation that we might someday find, but I don't find the absence of that explanation indicative of proof of God. You know, that's my belief. I don't know what label you want to put on that.
For sure. I think if I'm allowed to go on just for a few more seconds.
Oh, please.
Yes, but I think by the same token that we call the theist a theist because they believe in the God based on the evidence that's been presented to them.
Yep.
I think that by that same token, you can say that you're an atheist because you haven't been presented with that evidence.
Oh,
so
sure,
that's
yeah.
what I would.
I mean, I think here's the thing. There's two ways that people sometimes define atheist. Sometimes atheist is, and I'm talking colloquially, right? I think you're completely right about the actual definition, but in popular culture, atheist is sometimes seen as the person who positively believes there is no God, and agnostic is the person who just believes none has been demonstrated yet. Now, I know that you're sort of giving a different definition, so maybe it was like under that understanding of what it means to be atheist that I said I'm agnostic, not atheist. I just don't remember the interview in question, though, you know?
Okay, yeah.
All right, Micah, thank you very much. Glad I was able to answer your question. Let's take a quick break. If you're on hold, don't hang up, because we are going to take more phone calls in mere moments.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Let's go back to the phones. A lot of people holding today. Big news week. Let's see what people have to say. At 617-830-4750. Our next caller is from the 845 area code. 845, who's this?
Hey, it's Mark Benjamin.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on the people in the cryptocurrency community have like a kind of a pseudo myth of the Fed, and I want to just ask, what do you think is real and what do you think is overblown on that?
Well,
And
what
also,
specifically
what do you
are you
think
talking
on the
like?
new...
Oh boy, it sounds like it's getting a little crazy there,
Oh,
Mark.
sorry, there's lots of people talking near me.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the new Belt and Road Initiative, and do you think it's going to kneecap the dollar?
Don't know a thing about the Balkan Road Initiative. What specific conspiracy about the Fed are you referring to? Like the one that it's all secretly controlled by a Jewish cabal, or something a little more palatable?
Well, rather than unlike the normal conservatives, it's more like, or I guess the more racial types of conservatives is just basically like the Fed is controlled, but is not a state property, or basically is not controlled by America, and also like the other Feds around the world.
Is it controlled
and basically
by
they're being controlled by a small group, not just the maybe someone happens to be Jewish, but some others, basically just very rich guys that doesn't have the best interest at heart for the majority of people. If I wanted to boil it down. And that's also kind of the crypto, the silver, and all that stuff community that says that like we want to back it by stuff, but at the same time they'll cause some serious problems.
What's the specific, as specifically as possible, Mark? What is the specific question here?
Okay. What is the Fed, like, is having the Fed not in control, Fed being controlled by the state that the Fed's in, a problem? And
the
should
state
we
or the
have,
country? I want to
like,
make sure. Are you
more
using
audits?
state as in state or state as in country, like nation state?
Just the like, you know, the U.S., England, and just, you know, England. And just kind of make it like the banking system a bit more simple.
Okay.
Make it so that people can not have it inflated and a bunch of guys get away scot-free for inflating the currency or
So the question is about inflation, or is it about Jews? I don't know, Mark. I'm doing the best I can.
Sorry. It's like the cryptocurrency community it's basically like,
oh yeah, I forgot that
the
this started
dollar's
about
not
crypto.
really in our control. That's basically it.
Okay, I'll look into that. I'm not really sure. But I don't know. I think I'm in over. This is above my pay grade. I don't know what else to say. 617-830-4750. Let's try a different number if we can. Let's go. These are always fun. Let's go to country code 33. Who's calling from country code 33?
That would be me.
And who's this?
Jason?
Jason, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from France, but I'm ex-San Diegan, in fact.
Oh, beautiful. Well, where in France are you?
Toulouse.
Toulouse. Wow. What's that like? What's living in Toulouse like?
Boy, I came here because of my wife, and now I'm here because of my job. And sadly, I don't think watching YouTube every night, combination of your channel and a few others, I don't think I'm ready to go back anytime soon, that's for sure.
I don't blame you. What's your question today?
Well, my question is, I saw Hillary Clinton was in the news again today.
What, she broke her ankle or
she
something?
causes me a whole lot of heartbreak because, honestly, I was not able to vote for her last year.
Who were you able to vote for?
I wasn't, for me it's an absentee ballot, right? And I'm registered to vote, and my wife was adamant that I vote for Hillary, and of course, coming from California, I knew it really didn't matter.
Right.
But I understand a lot of what happened.
But who did you vote for, ultimately?
I did not vote.
You didn't vote? Okay.
But I really see her as a big part of the problem.
Yeah.
And every time I see her name in the news, it just completely upsets me because I think that she should just go away.
Okay.
And I was curious how you feel about, honestly, yeah, I don't like the word deplorable. I don't like the word snowflake. I don't like what's going on in my country, but I really don't I don't see how the Democratic Party could have put her forward, first of all, and I just don't know that I trust them to put somebody good forward next time.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't, right? I mean, they've not earned our trust. I think that you're right as far as that goes. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Hillary in the news this week because she sprained her ankle or something?
That's not the article that I saw. The article I saw was more... it commented on how that she won the states that had the most economic impact in the United States, and that the states that voted for Trump were, of course, the least interesting economically, and it was more about her still trying to explain why she lost the election.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think
no
there's going to be coverage of Hillary Clinton because she is a notable politician. I think the more interesting part of your commentary is, can we trust the DNC in 2020? And I am skeptical that we can. I have seen they have lost my trust and certainly have not regained it. So I share your skepticism there.
Yeah, I mean, if you stay on YouTube, you see a lot of support for Bernie Sanders. You see a lot of support for the underdogs, so to speak.
Yep.
But
listen, Jason, I'm curious. How old were you when you moved to France? How old were you?
It was about 15 years ago, so I'm almost 50 now.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like there's just a very, very slight hint of a French accent in your English, which is fascinating because like when I moved to the U.S., in English I don't have a noticeable accent, but now when I speak Spanish I do, and it's just interesting how that happens when one moves, you know?
Well, yeah, I work in biological research, so a lot of our work is done in English, but of course I'm living in France. My kids are in a bilingual school. But,
all right, Jason, very good. I really appreciate the call and share your skepticism about the DNC running a fair primary, and if it's not fair, about running an unfair primary where they choose the right person. I share your skepticism. Let's go to our next caller from the 701 area code. Who's there?
I'm Sadie from North Dakota.
Go ahead, Katie. North Dakota. I think this might be our first call from there. What is that like?
Very red, very deep red.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's Sadie.
It's shady?
Sadie with an S, yep.
Stady.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My question for you is, being up here, like I said, it's really red, and the news really focuses on that angle, and it's so different from even just watching, like, MSNBC or CNN.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So their views obviously are really skewed, and trying to present any other evidence is nearly impossible. And I was just curious if you thought there was any way to get around that.
Well, you've got to seek out your own news sources, right? Now, to be clear, you're talking about the local news there, right? Like the local news stations are just there's like a built-in right-wing point of view, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, listen, you've got the internet there.
Yeah, so that's all anyone is exposed to. So trying to have a conversation with anyone, this is the only news they've heard. They haven't heard any other point of view.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to have a conversation.
Yeah, I don't envy that. I mean, I think all you can do as an individual is tell people that there are other news sources and other perspectives. But obviously, the echo chamber effect and the filter bubble effect is really, really bad. And if you've got people there that get all their news from the local right-wing North Dakota news stations and then they watch Fox News, and all their friends on Facebook are sharing right-wing stuff, this is a major problem. I've lectured about this at colleges, and I don't have an answer, unfortunately. I don't know how to break the filter bubble. It sort of depends on people like you to say you should at least get some other ideas in your media diet, and I think probably most people depressingly will be pretty resistant to that.
Yeah, so far they have been.
Yeah.
I've tried, but it's hard.
Yeah.
I wish there was a solution, because I know it's not just a problem here, it's all over.
Oh, it's everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I think it's worse there because, I think like in Boston, the local news is probably somewhat more balanced to some degree, although people are sometimes shocked by how right-wing local news is in Boston. Hey, listen, I'm curious. I asked someone earlier who called from a small town in Tennessee, what's the best restaurant where you live in North Dakota?
Any of the small town restaurants, really, where everything is like home cooked. There's a great place in this little town. that we go through on the way home. That's absolutely amazing. There's some food trucks around here. I'm actually in Fargo.
Oh, okay.
And some of the food trucks have the best food.
Well, actually, you know, one of the right wing. There's this guy Scott Hennon who I believe runs a radio station in Fargo, and it's just extreme right wing nonsense. And I see the stuff he posts on Facebook because I met the guy at a radio conference, and he's in Fargo, and I don't even know if he still runs the station, but he used to. It's bad. I don't envy you one bit.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yep. All right, Katie, thank you very much. Appreciate the call.
Some of the media. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very much appreciate it. It's bad out there. It's bad out there. There's no doubt about that. 617-830-4750. Why don't we try the 469 area code? Let's go to our next caller from 469. Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Yeah. Okay, great. Hi, I'm Deshaun. I'm calling from Texas, the great big old state down here.
Great. What's on your mind, Deshaun?
So I know, like, we just had the Pennsylvania special election last night, and that's had me really excited, but also kind of intrigued because the candidate that ran in that race was a lot more of like a blue dog kind of candidate.
You think
it wasn't
so?
Exactly
I don't know.
like
I mean, I've heard that from some on the right, but he's for marijuana legalization. He wants, I believe, single payer. He was against Trump's tax cuts. I don't know.
Yeah, but it was interesting because, like, okay, so I think the kind of what they're basing that off of is like how he tried to get himself to be like perceived by the voters, by the electorate there.
Yep.
So like if you see any of his campaign stuff, he's like really pushing that he's a veteran, and he's like, you know, because there's this kind of, maybe it's just the perception on the right that veterans are all Republicans or something. So he tried to push that to the electorate there. But anyway, I was intrigued because because it went phenomenally well for the Democrat. I mean, it was a 20-point swing. It's in line with our special election swings, which is in danger for Republicans.
Yeah.
So I was interested in asking you, what do you think is best for the Democratic Party right now coming into the midterms, like the real heat of it? Is it the path of going with like a candidate that's more like DCCC backed and like, or is it better to go with a candidate that's very local, like a Connor Lamb?
Oh, yeah. So this
local.
is a very good question. There is no one answer. If this is what, and in fact, it exposes what Democrats should not do. Do not look for a solution that will work everywhere, right? In some places, one type of candidate will be much better than the other. And in the end, Deshaun, it will come down to one thing, which is turnout. That's the thing. It doesn't matter whether it's a blue dog or a DCCC, a Joe Manchin type, a Bernie Sanders type, whatever. If the turnout is not there, because it's pathetically low in midterm elections often, it's not going to matter. Democrats are going to get killed.
Well, that's the crazy part, because it's been phenomenal for Democrats in the midterms right now. I think I was looking at the data.
Yeah.
And
don't do
like
that. That's the problem. Don't look at, because the problem is people are looking at it and they're saying exactly what you're saying, Deshaun. It looks fantastic, and that gets people not to vote,
Oh, no. Yeah.
I know you're voting. Don't worry. I'm not talking about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's another thing. I'm in a red state, right? And I don't know if you know anything that's really like big happening down here in Texas, but Laura Moser down in Houston, there's been a lot of controversy because the DCC is backing this other candidate and actually actively campaigning against Laura in a swing district that they need to win. And a lot of the people that at least I can see on social media and such are behind Laura. A lot of the local people that are going to vote that live there, and it's kind of crazy. So yeah, I'm just just gauging that. Like, is it what are the national party? What the national party is going to do for that? But does the result from the election, like, what does your outlook look on the midterms, like based off of this House race?
My outlook is
in previous special.
We got to get out there and vote, and I'm not going to say anything about how the generic ballots are looking, because that can only help to get people to stay home. It's going to be an uphill battle, is my point of view, and we all got to go vote. All right, Deshaun, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We will take calls again. I know there's more than a dozen people holding. Unfortunately, that's just all the time we have today, but we will take calls again. That I promise you, and we've got more audience questions coming up after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We've got some great audience questions I want to answer this week. First one is from Joe. Joe says, hey, David, is the political climate for gun control actually changing, or is it more of the same non-action that we should be expecting? Yeah, so this is related to the Parkland, Florida shooting that took place, and there's no question that we've seen louder activism. And by louder, I don't mean people yelling. I just mean like more noticeable activism around gun safety regulations, including from a lot of younger people in the Parkland, Florida area. I do not have an optimistic view on this. I believe that if we couldn't pass just background checks after Sandy Hook with 85 or 90% support from the American public, if absolutely nothing changed after that horrible Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas about 6 months ago, I have a really hard time believing we're going to see actual change with a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a putatively Republican, but mostly clueless above all else, president in the Oval Office. I just don't think we're going to see it. And we've already seen the NRA start to work, I don't want to say work its magic, but do exactly what we know it does and is expected to do, to say, hey, we all care about safety, but this idea you had is not a good idea, and that idea they had is not a good idea. We've already seen Trump back off of the idea, several ideas that he has had, including a 21-year-old minimum age requirement for all gun purchases. Trump already seems to be backing off of that. So I am inspired that this got more people activated, but I'm pretty skeptical that we're going to really see any changes. I don't know if you disagree with me.
Maybe there'll be a ban on bump stocks because the NRA doesn't really profit, I don't think, too much off of those because it's a modification, right?
Yes.
It's an accessory. And there's also, I think, good constitutional standing because you're not infringing on people's rights to bear arms.
That's
exactly.
Right.
It just modifies the weapon.
Listen, it's all gray area, right? Once you say you shouldn't have shoulder-mounted RPGs,
sure.
Can you really say that you also are able to, you can't limit AR-15s, but you can limit bump stocks, but you can't have armor-piercing ammunition, but regular in the same gun is okay? It's all great. Once you say that there's any limitation, it's just a debate and it's a total gray area.
Everyone's drawing a line somewhere.
Now, do you think that maybe just on the background checks we might see progress? Like, are we getting closer to just being able to maybe do that? I wish I could say I was confident that there would be changes, but I just don't see it. I really don't.
Probably not, because right-wingers have a pretty strong due process argument, I think.
Yeah.
And I know that Trump was talking initially about worrying about due process later, which is really not how due process works.
No, that's the whole point of it, yeah.
That's the whole point of it. But I don't think we're going to see any progress there. If not after Sandy Hook, probably not after Parkland either.
I want to be proven wrong, right? I'm not saying this to upset people who are activating. And in fact, if anything, you should get active around this, because I think that the natural trajectory of it is we just kind of forget about it, and soon there will be another indictment in Russia, and then Trump will have had some other affair, and we'll have deregulation of the banking, and whatever. There will be important and trivial and all sorts of other issues, and we'll just kind of forget about it until the next mass shooting, which is probably going to be this week, and there won't be much coverage unless it's a big one at a school or something.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised that the Parkland shooting stayed in the news for a little while,
so
we could discuss gun control. I thought it was going to go away in like 2 or 3 days, because they're happening so often now,
But hasn't it kind of almost faded away now? I mean, I still saw David Hogg, I think, one of those
the kids
students.
are very active, and I think that's keeping it in the news cycle.
Yeah, but it's starting to fade. It always does. Gaia wrote in saying, David, there's lots of talk about, quote, mental health in the U.S., especially related to gun safety. How would you improve the mental health system in the United States? This is like a really big question, and I want to talk about it not really related to guns, because the gun issue is a specific issue, but let's talk more generally. There is still a huge amount of stigma in the United States about so-called mental illness, and I say so-called because it has a very particular implication, even though, someone who suffers from like generalized anxiety disorder is in a sort of strict sense someone with a, quote, mental illness, in the same way that a cold is a physical illness. Just because something counts as a mental illness or physical illness doesn't mean that someone is so incapacitated that they can't be sort of well-adjusted members of society, right? So I think one thing is it has to be significantly destigmatized. The other thing relates to health insurance, and the health insurance status quo that we have screws up so much of mental health. And there's something called a diagnosis code. And when someone goes to see a mental health professional, in order to receive covered treatment from their insurer, the mental health provider needs to diagnose the individual with some condition. And there's been this sort of catch-all that has been developed, which I think is called, my dad was telling me about it, who's in mental health. I think it's called like general adjustment disorder or something like that. And it basically just means life. You're dealing with life, right? You're having some difficulty adjusting to some reality of what it means to be human and exist in the world. But big picture, these diagnosis codes are sort of used to limit the number of sessions that people can have and to generate requirements for providers to, on an ongoing basis, continue justifying exactly why this is someone whose treatment should be reimbursed. I believe that mental health needs to be taken sort of out of that part of health insurance and put more into the sort of general wellness and preventative care side, where we should be encouraging people to take advantage of mental health services with the idea that over the long term, those are going to be healthier people, less likely to become sick with conditions that can be psychogenic or psychosomatic as a result of stress and anxiety in their lives, less likely to end up maybe needing to go on expensive psychiatric medications, et cetera. So that, I think that those are some big picture changes that need to happen. One is very specific within health insurance. The other is more of a cultural thing. It's just around the stigma of mental health. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything else big or if you agree, disagree with that. I mean, these are, how do you change stigma at large in culture, right? I mean, it's a really difficult thing. And even when we have a shooting and there's just this phrase, mental illness, mental illness. Well, just because somebody saw a therapist 4 years ago and then later they go and commit an act of violence doesn't necessarily mean that whatever brought them to the therapist 4 years ago is to blame. And that's a problem.
And I worry that could be counterproductive too, because maybe someone who wants to hold on to their guns also is experiencing depression or some sort of mental illness.
Absolutely.
And so they're averse to going to a professional to help them, like a therapist.
Yep.
They're averse to taking antidepressants because then they think the government's going to come after their guns.
Sure.
And they'd rather have that.
That is shockingly, and maybe not shockingly, but depressingly common in the military, where in the military, it is known that if you go and seek help for certain things, it's not going to be good for your military career. And of course, that creates situations, and the military is trying to change this culture. It creates situations where people will get worse because they're not seeking treatment for something because they don't want to end up losing their position in the military. And I think you're pointing to something that also exists in the general population.
I think we've come a long way, though. I remember in the 70s, well, I wasn't there, but
no, but you read about it in medical journals, sure.
Yeah. George McGovern, he ran for president, I think in 1972. His running mate had like electroshock therapy as a way to treat his depression. Maybe he took some SSRIs too.
That's right.
And they had to take him off of the ticket to replace him because of the stigma behind mental health.
That's right. And I recently read Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail by Hunter S. Thompson, and there's a couple chapters devoted to that entire thing and how there was probably a mishandling of it from the beginning, in part just because of how there were constantly mishandlings of things related to mental health at the time. Fabiana wrote in, I don't believe that Republican policy is good for African Americans, but can you talk about what Republicans could do to better appeal to black voters without just becoming progressive? Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's very easy to say if Republicans just adopted progressive policies, then they would better appeal to black voters because oftentimes those policies are better for non-white voters. I actually think that there's a major opportunity to appeal to black voters. And again, I'm talking, not that I am giving Republicans advice, but there is a significant contingent. The African-American population is quite religious. There is a very religious component to the African-American population in the United States. And I believe that you already see that in some cases where some of the more prominent black Republicans are often religious leaders or religiously connected individuals, pastors from conservative churches or whatever. The religious African American community might serve as one of the better entryways for Republicans. And again, I hope that they fail. I hope that they don't succeed in this type of pandering to black voters, because on policy, it's really not Republicans who have the interests of non-white voters in mind. But I think that the religion component could be there. And when you think back to Proposition 8 in California, this was the sort of referendum on gay marriage.
Right, to ban it.
To ban gay marriage. A big part of that being defeated, of gay marriage being defeated, so to speak, was religious black voters in California. So if I were thinking cynically as a Republican, right, not in ways where I can actually help African-American voters, but just ways that I can get their votes, I'd probably be thinking pretty heavily along the lines of religion in some way, shape, or form.
And remember, Prop 8 passed on the same day that Barack Obama was elected president for the first time.
Yep.
So there probably was some overlap there between the black population that wanted to ban gay marriage and wanted to vote for the first black president.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised.
There are also sort of conservative arguments that you can make that would potentially appeal to black voters. So, like, for example, we know that for the same drug crimes that are sort of engaged in at similar rates by whites and blacks, blacks are more likely to be indicted, prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to more time, right? And on the left, we tend to take an approach of it's discriminatory, it's more of a social justice approach, we should be dealing with drugs as an issue of public health, not as an issue of criminality, etc. The right could maybe try to appeal to black and Latino voters on that issue by saying, listen, the prisons are a waste of money, and black folks and Hispanic folks are disproportionately impacted by the prison industrial complex. And we want to change that, and it'll be better for you, and it'll be better for the economy because we're going to spend less money on prisons or something like that. Like, there's probably ways. It's interesting because they've chosen not really to do that, right? There's really been no outreach in any serious manner that's credible to the non-white population of the United States by Republicans. They pick off some votes here and there. I think there are arguments to be made. I think that they are totally pandering arguments, but there are arguments to be made, and we don't really hear them very often.
There's a lot here. It's very nuanced, but you're saying that it's not enough for, say, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, a Republican, to nominate Ben Carson as his Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
That's
and
not
have
enough.
Omarosa on it as an advisor.
No. Having Omarosa on as an advisor if anything is working against them. And it's also not enough for the President of the United States to say, where's my African American, while looking out into a crowd while wearing a Make America Great Again hat. That was not a move that really bolstered the black vote for Donald Trump. Shockingly, maybe to some, but not to others. We've got a great bonus show for you today. DavidPakman.com/membership and Patreon.com/David Pakman Show are the two ways that you can get access to that bonus show, where we will continue the party here on this Friday.
The David Pakman Show at DavidPakman.com.